of God. Who shall measure the waters in the hollow of his hand? You know how much water there is in the world? I read like the earth's 3/4 covered in water. 70%, 75%, something like that. That's a lot of water. Who shall measure the water with the hollow of his hand? And meted out heaven with a span. This is heaven to God. It's a perspective of who God is. And comprehendeth the dust of the earth in a measure. He's aware of every... You ever try counting dust? There's a lot of it. But he comprehends the dust of the earth in a measure, and weigheth the mountains in scales and the hills in a balance. Who hath directed the Spirit of the Lord, or been his counselor, and hath taught him? With whom took he counsel, and whom instructed him and taught him in the path of judgment, and taught him knowledge, and showed to him the way of understanding? Behold, the nations, we think of nations as, some nations are bigger and more powerful than others, but we think of, ourselves and Russia and China, no matter what you believe politically. This has nothing to do with that. But you think of those as being big, powerful nations. How's God look at them? Verse 15, behold, the nations are as a drop of a bucket. That ain't much. And are counted as the small dust of the balance. Behold, he taketh up the isles as a very little thing. And Lebanon has not sufficient to burn, nor the beast thereof sufficient for a burnt offering. Lebanon at that time, I think, was a pretty, at least as far as resources, a lot of trees. If I remember right, was it Solomon had cedars brought from Lebanon for the building of the house of God? I might be wrong on that, but it seems like that's what happened. And the beasts there's not enough beasts in Lebanon that are sufficient for a burnt offering to really honor God correctly. All nations are before him as nothing. They are counted to him less than nothing and vanity. And I could go, I'm not going to read the whole chapter, but does that give you, I don't know about anybody else, but I think it's healthy for us to think of God that way. Not just dwell on that, because there's other attributes he has, but he's undescribable. The things he's capable of, and the knowledge and the power that he has. Anyway, why did I bring that up? Because of what chapter 39 says. So we're still in Isaiah. Go back to chapter 39. Verse 1. At that time, Merobach-Baladan, I probably butchered it. Fortunately, I don't think I have to say it again. The son of Baladan, king of Babylon. There's a reason we're reading this. Still haven't revealed it yet. King of Babylon. Remember that empire, and we're going to learn a lot about it in Daniel. Sent letters with a present to Hezekiah, for he had heard that he had been sick and was recovered. Hezekiah was a king over Judah back about 100 years before the book of Daniel was written. And Hezekiah, verse 2, was glad of them and showed them the house of his precious things, and the silver and the gold, and the spices and the precious ointments, and all the house of his armor, and all that was found in his treasures. There was nothing in his house, nor in all his dominion, that Hezekiah did not show them. What was Hezekiah doing there? Bragging. Look at all this stuff we've acquired. We got all this gold. We got all this silver. We got this. We got that. He was bragging a little bit, which, it's human nature. That's all I'm going to say about it. We'll see what God does. Then came Isaiah the prophet in verse 3 unto King Hezekiah and said unto him, What saith these men? And from whence came they unto thee? And Hezekiah said, They are come from a far country unto me, even from Babylon. Then saith he, What have they seen in thine house? And Hezekiah answered, All that is in my house have they seen. There is nothing among my treasures that I have not showed them. Then saith Isaiah to Hezekiah, Hear the word of the Lord of hosts. Behold, the days come that all that is in thine house and that which thy fathers have laid up in store until this day shall be carried to Babylon. Nothing shall be left, saith the Lord. And of thy sons that shall issue from thee, which thou shalt beget, shall they take away, and they shall be eunuchs in the palace of the king of Babylon. Keep that tucked away, those two verses right there. Now, we'll go to the book of Daniel. What we just read was, if the notes in my Bible are right, 712, 713 BC. Daniel starts here about 607. So we're about 100 years now later than what we just read in Isaiah. Oh, by the way, the reason I read through chapter 40, in chapter 39, Isaiah just told Hezekiah, this is going to happen to Israel or to Judah, and it's going to be bad. But then he goes right into verse 40, and he's telling them who God is and that he still has their back. What you're going to go through with Babylon is going to be terrible, but God's capable and powerful enough and able to bring you back when the time's right. Those words weren't actually said in verse 40, but that description of God right after he told them that they're going to come and take everything, and they're going to take your kids and they're going to make them eunuchs, and then he goes into how great God is. That's why I brought all that out. But anyway, Daniel chapter 1. 100 years later now. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, the king of Judah, came Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, to Jerusalem and besieged it. When they besiege a place, it's total takeover. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, with part of the vessels of the house of God. This siege, if I remember correctly, happened in several different ways. It's not a contradiction that he says they took part of the vessels of the house of God. They ended up with all of them, just like Isaiah said they would. But in this siege here, they took part of them. I don't know how much. I don't know how much they didn't take. Which he carried into the land of Shinar to the house of his God. Is there a difference between the house of God and the house of his God? There's a big difference. And he brought the vessels into the treasury, into the treasure house of his God. So there's half of what Isaiah told Hezekiah was going to happen 100 years later. It happened exactly like God said it would. And that's, if we can learn, there's a lot of things we can learn from the Old Testament, but I think one of the key things is if God says something's going to happen, it is going to happen exactly the way he says it's going to happen. We might not understand it. We might totally miss it. But there will be a day when we can look back and say, God said this, and this is exactly what happened. We can trust him. That's the value in all that. If he says something, whether it seems good in a sense of everything God does is good, but whether we see it as being good, something I would like to happen, or something terrible that I don't want to happen, we can trust God. And he's always got a reason, and he's always got a good reason for what he does. We may not see it all the time. But anyway, they came, they besieged Jerusalem, they took part of the vessels of the house of God and put in his pagan God's house. Those vessels are going to come up again later in the book of Daniel. Pretty interesting. Okay, verse 3. And the king spake unto Ashpenaz, or something like that, the master of his eunuchs, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel, and of the king's seed, and of the princes. So they chose out who they were going to bring. I don't know how they went through the process, but they chose young men that in their eyes had potential. I'm just going to leave it there. Potential for what? We'll get some hints on that in a few minutes. Children in whom was no blemish, but well favored, and skillful in all wisdom and cunning and knowledge, and understanding science, and such as had ability in them to stand in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans. I'm not going to claim that I understand all this, but I want to get the right guys now. I got too many names in my brain. When Nebuchadnezzar came in and captured Jerusalem, he picked out the finest young men that they could train to become Babylonians or Chaldeans, same thing, that would be beneficial to Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom. These guys have potential, we can use them, but we have to train them to think and believe like we do. That, from a human perspective, makes a lot of sense. You got this big, vast empire, and you are pretty much ruling the whole world. You want to have the best of the best to choose from to be in your cabinet, is the word we use in our political system. One other thing that was mentioned here, I got to find his name again. Ashpenaz in verse 3, master of his eunuchs. All these young men that were brought in were made sterile. And there was quite a few reasons for that. I'm sure I don't understand them all. But one big thing, it took away their drive and desire for women, and you got a bunch of young guys. I mean, it wasn't just the boys from Jerusalem. I say boys, they're probably teenagers, early 20s. I don't know how old they were. Young guys. You know, that's a big drive for a young man. And they want these guys to be faithful to their nation and to serve Nebuchadnezzar. And there's other reasons besides that, but I think that's probably one of the main ones. So we kind of live in a farming community, but not near as much as it used to be. But does the term, when I'm talking pigs, does the term barrel mean anything to you? Or cattle, does the word steer mean anything to you? Something's been done to those male hogs to make them a barrow or a steer. And yeah, they were, we call it, I took my dog to the vet to get fixed, but you actually took him to get broke because things don't work the same anymore. And not to make light of it, but that's what these young men, Daniel and his buddies, that's what they went through to be made part of this system, to be brought up and trained as a Babylonian or Chaldean. Kind of a side point, but it wasn't a side point to them. Guarantee it. That's a big deal. Okay, verse 5. And the king appointed them a daily provision of the king's meat and of the wine which he drank, so nourishing them 3 years, that at the end thereof they might stand before the king. So the king's probably not going to lay eyes on these guys for 3 years, but I want you to bring them in. I want you to get them settled in with, this guy was the prince over the eunuchs. They had other eunuchs, Babylonian young men that were being trained and made culturally to fit in with what Nebuchadnezzar was trying to do. And he did it pretty successfully for a long time. But for 3 years, I want you to feed these guys the same meat the king ate, the same wine the king drank. I want you to feed them well, treat them well. I want these guys to be in shape. I want them to look good. This is Nebuchadnezzar, what's going through his mind. And in 3 years, I'm going to check them out. I'm going to see how they're doing. See how they're going to fit into my system. The king appointed them daily provision of the king's meat and of the wine which he drank, so nourishing them 3 years, that at the end thereof they might stand before the king, so he could finally see them. And okay, this is the group I have. It's like when probably a lousy example, but when like the Naval Academy graduates their officers. These are the best of the best that are in this academy, and this is what we have to work with out of this graduating class. Does that make sense? It's kind of what's going on here. They've been trained. And among these were of the children of Judah. See, it's not just guys from Judah. This is a world-dominating empire. Among these were of the children of Judah, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, unto whom the prince of the eunuchs gave names, for he gave unto Daniel the name of Belteshazzar, and to Hananiah of Shadrach, and to Mishael, Meshach, and to Azariah of Abednego. So they not only physically made them eunuchs. I'll just leave it there. That's the Bible word. They fed them like Babylonians. They trained them like Babylonians. And they gave them Babylonian names. They are trying to totally take these guys and convert them to Babylonians for their benefit. So they changed their names. But Daniel, this is where my respect level starts really growing for Daniel. Purposed in his heart, after being taken captive, all the things he's been forced or made to do, but Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank. And this is a pretty young man. I'm not going to put an age on him. Pretty young. To take a stand like that and purpose that in his heart. Daniel wasn't just your average young guy. Therefore, he requested of the prince of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. Now God had brought Daniel into favor and tender love with the prince of the eunuchs. God can make relationships work out. These two guys apparently got along quite well. But verse 10, and the prince of the eunuchs said unto Daniel, I fear my lord the king. We're talking Nebuchadnezzar, the king of the most powerful empire in the world, told him, feed these guys this stuff. And questioning Nebuchadnezzar didn't usually turn out well for those asking, why do you want to do this, or questioning his motives or anything. So let's see how this pans out. And the prince of the eunuchs said unto Daniel, I fear my lord the king, whom hath appointed your meat and your drink. This was his idea. This wasn't my idea. For why should he see your faces worse liking than the children which are of your sort? Then shall ye make me endanger my head to the king. If I don't feed you the way he told me to, and you guys don't turn out well, it's coming back on me, because I'm the one who's supposed to make this happen. Shall make me endanger my head to the king. Daniel was, let's just read it. Verse 11. Then said Daniel to Melzar, whom the prince of the eunuchs had set over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, prove thy servants, I beseech thee, 10 days. This is a 3-year process. Remember back in whatever verse it was. This is a 3-year process. Give us 10 days. And let them give us pulse to eat and water to drink. Pulse is kind of a mush made of vegetables and water. And let our countenances, or our appearance, be looked at before thee, and the countenance of the children that eat the portion of the king's meat, as thou seest, and as thou seest, deal with thy servants. Just give us 10 days, and if you can't see a difference, we'll scrap the whole thing. So he can, what can 10 days hurt? So he can send it to them in this matter and prove them 10 days. And at the end of 10 days, their countenances appeared fairer and fatter in flesh than all the children which did eat the portion of the king's meat. Just the opposite effect that you would expect. Not that eating vegetables and drinking water isn't good for you, but that one word there, fatter, they were filled out more. Normally that would be a diet people would choose to lose weight. These guys were filling out on it. Had nothing to do with the food or the lack of. It was the hand of God. It had to be. There's no other explanation for it. Verse 11. Or verse 16, I'm sorry. Thus Melzar took away the portion of their meat and the wine that they should drink, and gave them pulse. As for these 4 children, what's the next 3 words? Somebody say it. God gave them. Thank you. This wasn't from them. This was from God. God gave them knowledge and skill in all learning and wisdom. And Daniel, on top of that, had understanding in all visions and dreams. Now, at the end of the days, We just jumped ahead 3 years. At the end of the three years that the king appointed, that the king had said he should bring them in, then the prince of the eunuchs brought them in before Nebuchadnezzar. And the king communed with them. He was getting to know them. How you guys doing? Who's going to fit in? How am I going to use this group of young men? The king communed with them, and among them all was found none like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore stood they before the king. Those 4 guys just stood. I'm not saying the other guys weren't qualified to serve in this agenda of Nebuchadnezzar's, but the 4 standouts were the 4 Jewish boys. That for 3 years didn't eat the king's meat or drink his wine either, but just their knowledge and their everything about them, they stood out above everybody else. And in all matters of wisdom and understanding that the king required of them, he found them not just a little bit. It wasn't like everybody else got a A- and they got an A. In all manners of wisdom and understanding that the king required of them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and astrologers that were in all his realm. And Daniel continued even unto the first year of King Cyrus. We'll see that when we get to the end of the book of Daniel. Can't remember how many years it was. Quite a few. Daniel was an old guy by the time we get to the end of this. Okay, we'll move into chapter 2. And in the 2nd year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, excuse me, Nebuchadnezzar dreamed dreams, wherewith his spirit was troubled and his sleep brake from him. Let's go back. Go back to verse 17 in chapter 1. As for these 4 children, God gave them knowledge and skill in all learning and wisdom, and Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. Keep that tucked away because there's a reason for it. Oh, I'm sorry, Cassandra. Yes? Let's take a look at that. I don't know if I'm going to be able to answer it. In fact, I just about think, at least right now, I'm not going to be able to answer it, but let's look at it. It's a good question. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, that's the king of Judah, came Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem and besieged it. Verse 1 in chapter 2, in the 2nd year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar dreamed dreams, wherewith his spirit was troubled in him. And we'll read the rest of it. How does that work out timing-wise if that was 3 years later? That's your question, right? My answer is I don't know. I don't either. You said, was he a junior? Nebuchadnezzar, I believe, was his name, because when the next king comes along, he's called by his name. So it wouldn't be the title. Could have been a junior. Could have been the next Nebuchadnezzar. It could be that chapter 2, maybe, and if it did, I spoke out of turn. We're told in verse 17 that God gave Daniel understanding in all visions and dreams. And then verse 18 says, now at the end of the days, or at the end of those 3 years, did chapter 2, because the Bible isn't always written in perfect order, could that refer back to before the 3 years were over that he had this vision, and Daniel was revealed that he could interpret things? I'm just asking questions. I don't know. I don't have a good answer, Cassandra. Something to chew on. Yeah, something to chew on. Anyway, we'll continue in chapter 2. Good observation, though. In the 2nd year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar dreamed dreams wherewith his spirit was troubled and his sleep brake from him. Then the king commanded to call. This might answer it for us. I don't know. Because at the end of the 10 years, back up in verse 20, when the king came in and communed with them, he found them 10 times better, the four Jewish boys, young men. He found them 10 times better than the magicians and astrologers that were in his realm. I don't know if this has anything to do with it or not, but in verse 2 now, in chapter 2, verse 2, the king commanded to call the guys that were mentioned back in verse 20, the magicians and the astrologers and sorcerers and the Chaldeans, for to show the king his dreams. So they came and stood before the king. This is just a question. It might be a partial answer to your question. If chapter 2 was after the 3 years and Daniel and the other 3 guys stood out 10 times better than the magicians and the astrologers, why didn't he call them also? Another question we can't answer. I'm going to leave you guys a lot of questions today. I'm sorry. They're questions I have too. Makes sense that this happened before the 3 years were over, because he didn't know that Daniel had all that wisdom yet. Maybe. It's a possibility. I'm not going to be dogmatic about it. Anyway, so they came and stood. Verse 2, the king commanded to call the magicians, the astrologers, and the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans, for to show the king his dreams. So they came and stood before the king. Regardless of the time frame and where we're at with all that I don't know if we're going to be able to answer, this is what's happening at this particular time. And the king said unto them, I have dreamed a dream, and my spirit was troubled to know the dream. Then spake the Chaldeans to the king in Syriac, O king, live forever. There's the typical, when you approach the king, we got to butter him up a little bit. And it's just being respectful. Tell thy servants the dream, and we will show the interpretation. I put a little note next to that. Yeah, tell us the dream and we'll make something up, because you don't know the answer anyway. Well, the king's going to call them out. It gets kind of humorous, at least my kind of humor, the kind I appreciate. The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, the thing is gone from me. If you will not make known unto me the dream with the interpretation thereof, you shall be cut in pieces and your houses shall be made a dunghill. You guys, for all these years, however long it's been, I'm adding this. Don't take too much to heart. But, I'm not going to do that. Let's just keep going. That's too much of my opinion. But he said, when they said, where's it at? Tell thy servants the dream in verse 4. Tell us what you dreamed, and we'll show you the interpretation. They didn't have a clue. And that's going to be real evident in just a couple minutes. But the king said, it's gone from me. I don't remember the dream, but I know I woke up and it bothered me. And you guys are supposed to be, remember what they're called: magicians, astrologers, sorcerers. You guys are supposed to be able to do this kind of stuff. So tell me the dream and the interpretation, or you're done. We'll get a new bunch in here. The thing is gone from me. If you will not make known unto me the dream with the interpretation thereof, you shall be cut in pieces, and your houses shall be made a dunghill. But if you show the dream and the interpretation thereof, ye shall receive of me gifts and rewards and great honor. Therefore, show me the dream and the interpretation thereof. They answered again and said, let the king tell the servants the dream, and we will show the interpretation of it. You got to give us something to work with here. The king answered and said, I know of certainty that you would gain the time, because you see the thing is gone from me. You're just trying to buy time now. But if you will not make known unto me the dream, there is but one decree for you. For you, this king is no dummy. You don't get in a position like that by being dumb. He's been around these guys, and he can see through some things, yet they still have their place. I don't understand it, but I don't need to. For ye have prepared lying and corrupt words to speak before me, till the time be changed. You guys already got a plan. If I tell you the dream, you're going to make something up. You're going to lie to me. I know it. Therefore, tell me the dream, and I shall know that you can show me the interpretation of. Prove yourselves. Tell me the dream. You're the sorcerers. You're the magicians. You're the astrologers. This is the kind of thing you claim to be able to do. Verse 10, the Chaldeans answered before the king and said, okay, we got to be honest with you, king. There is not a man upon the earth that can show the king's matter. There ain't nobody that can do this. And they're right with human knowledge. Daniel's an exception. We already saw that God gave them knowledge and skill and all learning and wisdom, and Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. But that came from God. These guys who are, again, magicians, soothsayers, astrologers, this is all false forms of power that are still being used today all over the place. But they told the king, there is not a man upon the earth that can show the king's matter. Therefore there is no king, lord, nor ruler that asks such things of any magician, astrologer, or Chaldean. You know what you're asking is just ridiculous, because nobody can do it. That'd be like, I don't know, some people can jump pretty high. I was going to say, if anybody can jump up and touch that light, let's go with the ceiling. I know that's impossible. Nobody asks anybody to do anything like that because it can't be done. Verse 11. And it is a rare thing that the king requireth, and there is none other that can show it before the king. What's the next three words? Except the gods. Is that a big G or little g gods? Little g gods. These guys, I got to give them credit. They're 100% dead wrong, but at least they got a little bit of faith in their pagan gods. No man can do this, but the gods can. And I think they're trying to pass it, you need to ask the gods. Don't ask us, because it's impossible. We can't do it. So I'll give them a little bit of credit. At least they partially believe what they say they believe, that their gods have some kind of power. It is a rare thing that the king requireth, and there is none other that can show it before the king except the gods, whose dwelling is not with flesh. Humanly impossible. For this cause the king was angry and very furious, and commanded to destroy all the wise men of Babylon. And the decree went forth that the wise men should be slain, and they sought Daniel and his fellows to be slain. So they were, even if it was, we never did get that time frame worked out, and we probably won't, but even if just because they were in training to become part of this group, they were going to be slain also. Then Daniel answered with counsel and wisdom to Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, which had gone forth to slay the wise men of Babylon. Daniel had enough guts to stand up. What did he have to lose? He was going to die. Hang on a second. We might be able to work this out. He answered and said unto Arioch, the king's captain, why is the decree so hasty from the king? Then Arioch made the thing known to Daniel, explained the whole situation. Why are you here to kill us? Run that by me? Because of the dream, they couldn't interpret it, couldn't tell him the dream, so he's killing all of you. He made the thing known to Daniel. Then Daniel went in and desired of the king that he would give him time and that he would show the king the interpretation. We're going to see in a minute what Daniel did with that time. Then Daniel went to his house and made the thing known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions. So he shared it with his 4 Jewish friends, companions. And I don't know how much time they allowed him. I don't know if he said you got 20 minutes or 3 days, or I have no idea. But this is what they did with the time. Verse 18, that they would desire mercies of the God of heaven concerning this secret, that Daniel and his fellows should not perish with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Then was the secret revealed to Daniel in a night vision. And Daniel blessed the God of heaven. Daniel answered and said, blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. And he changeth the times and the seasons. He removeth kings and set up kings. He giveth wisdom unto the wise and knowledge to them that know understanding. He revealeth the deep and secret things. He knoweth what is in the darkness, and the light dwelleth with him. Daniel asked for a little bit of time that I might be able to answer the king's question. And he went and found 4 prayer partners, and they went and asked God to help them. That's how they used that time. If there's nothing else we can learn out of the book of Daniel, that's pretty valuable. A friend of mine, kind of on the same note, gave me a license plate that he picked up at a flea market probably, 25 years ago. It said, it kind of goes along with this. It's not about prayer, it's about the Bible. But It says, when all else fails, read the instructions. And it's got a picture of a Bible on it. These guys didn't have to wait till all else failed. As soon as the challenge was on, he went and found his three buddies, and they went and prayed and asked God for an answer. First option, not third, fourth, fifth, or 17th, like sometimes I do. They went to God first. What a lesson. All right, verse 24. We're about out of time. Let's just look at a couple verses. We'll probably pick up again in 24 next week. Therefore Daniel went in unto Arioch, whom the king had ordained to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went and said thus unto him, destroy not the wise men of Babylon. Bring me in before the king, and I will show the king the interpretation. Then Arioch brought in Daniel before the king in haste, and said thus unto him, I have found a man of the captives of Judah. That tells me probably back to your time frame question, Cassandra. I think this is before the 3 years. I still might be wrong, but they aren't recognized yet as being part of that group when they stood out 10 times better than the others. It's a little confusing, but it almost seems like those pieces are kind of fitting together. No, I lost my spot. 25, right? Then Arioch brought in Daniel before the king in haste, and said thus unto him, I have found a man of the captives of Judah that will make known unto the king the interpretation. The king answered and said to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, at least according to the king it was Belteshazzar, his name was Daniel. Art thou able to make known? Here's this kid. I call everybody under 40 a kid now. Comes with time. You'll understand someday if you're not there. Can you really do this? Oh, the professionals fell flat on their face, and that's why we're having this conversation. King answered and said unto Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, art thou able to make known unto me the dream which I have seen, and the interpretation thereof? I think he's probably dumbfounded. Anyway, we're out of time. It's a good place to stop and leave you hanging for a while. Read ahead a little bit if you get a chance. We'll come back and pick up here next week. But let's pray. Father, thank you for loving us. Thank you for giving us your word. Thank you that we can look back 26-ish 100 years and see things that we're developing that in one way or another still affect our lives today. Lord, as we go through Daniel, help us to understand the things that you want us to. I know you reveal yourself in layers, and in this crowd, I'm sure there's different layers, and yet I'm convinced you have something for everyone here. Lord, just bless us that way. We ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.